Hello everybody, time today for another little office rant, and in this we're discussing Lotus. Now I'm sure those that have been following the channel for a while will know that myself and many others out there have been shouting from the rooftops about how great Lotus are for years. But it seems at long last Lotus appear to be the darling of the automotive world. The Emira is the hot sports car ticket of the moment, and the Electra all-electric SUV is getting people talking, even if the talk isn't always positive. However, there is a very Lotusy white elephant out there too, because all of this new stuff happening at Hethel began with one car, the Evija. And even at a Lotus event that I attended late last year, that was the one car they didn't even mention at all. So today I'm discussing this all-new fancy hypercar and asking whether Lotus have made a terrible mistake, what exactly is going on, whether it's ever going to be released, and why I think they made some pretty fundamental errors of judgment. Enjoy. Today's little rant is brought to you by CarVertical, the super-powered super search. So whether you're on the hunt for a Lotus or a Lamborghini, don't forget to use CarVertical. With a registration plate or VIN number and just 60 seconds, you can get all the information you want to know on any potential used car purchase, including mileage issues, accident damage, regardless of whether a car has been written off or not, usage as a taxi, outstanding finance, and even some handy hints and tips, common failure points to look out for on certain models. For a special discount, don't forget to use my code JAYEMM and follow the link in the description down below. Anyway, on to the topic at hand, the Lotus Evija. Now to recap, if you're not sure what the Evija is, it's this, an all-electric hypercar with 2,000 horsepower and many bold claims being made about just how quick it is. According to Lotus, this is just about the fastest thing to ever enter production. Which is interesting because as far as I'm aware, it still hasn't entered production. It was debuted back in 2019 and at the time we were told deliveries might be starting in 2020. Granted, 2020 and 2021 didn't exactly turn out to be the years that any of us expected. However, in that time, Lotus have also announced and begun delivering the Emira, which according to them is also an all-new car and definitely not just a reskinned Evora. Oh, no, that would be crazy talk. And Lotus have also found time to develop and announce the Electra, their all-electric SUV, likely going to be the mainstream offering from the company for the next few years until we get their electric saloon, whatever they're going to call that, and hopefully a second-generation electric sports car. Whether it's actually going to be the second coming of the Elise or not, I don't know, but I am quite looking forward to it because I think if anybody can make an electric sports car work, it's Lotus. And there were many rumours that the Evija really was simply a dry run for that car, a way of testing many different technologies and writing off a bit of expenditure as R&D. However, in the last 4 years, we haven't actually heard all that much from the Evija itself. Sure, it's been seen out and about, paraded at Goodwood, and even the odd journalist has actually had a go, albeit in power restricted and very much pre-production guise. The most recent piece of news about the Evija from Lotus was the announcement of the Fittipaldi edition, which had many, including myself, scratching our heads because even for Lotus, this was a particularly bold move, announcing a special edition of a car you haven't actually even produced yet. The Fittipaldi is mechanically exactly the same, as far as I'm aware, as every other Evija, but it had the, I suppose, inevitable black and gold paintwork and some rather shameless decals on it hinting at Lotus's past glory. And as much as I love the fact that Lotus were once upon a time a dominant force in F1, that was a very long time ago, and to me, for them to be trying to sell this car based on something that happened more than 40 years ago, 50 years ago, in some cases, is just a tad cringy. Regardless, as far as I'm concerned, there are 3 fundamental mistakes that the Evija has made. First off, we appear to be in the middle of some sort of hypercar craze. The world has gone absolutely nuts. 20 years ago, if you wanted to spend £1 million on a car, you'd have to have worked pretty darn hard to find one. But now you've never had it so good, and it comes in many different shapes and sizes, from the likes of established players such as Ferrari with the Daytona SP3 and the incoming LaFerrari replacement, to Lamborghini with the Sian and the new Countach, although really that shouldn't be 2 million quid. Then you've got Bugatti with the Chiron, and McLaren with the Speedtail, and if you're feeling very brave, the Elva. Then you've got stuff like the Aston Martin Valkyrie and various other track-focused specials, and a whole host of new players too, from the likes of Rimac, then revived brands like Di Tommaso, and you've also got stuff like the new Gordon Murray Automotive T50 and T33. And in this segment, I suppose you actually have to regard people like Pagani and Koenigsegg as the kind of mainstream sensible option. So if you've got lots and lots of money and you want to spend lots of it on a car, you've got lots of choice. But even if you're the sort of person that's so well-heeled you could buy all of these cars that I've just mentioned, that doesn't necessarily mean that you want to or that you're going to. And there is a current trend at the moment in the automotive world for buying cars that are investment grade. It's a thing that I absolutely hate, but this really is the driving force behind cars like the McLaren F1 becoming worth increasingly silly amounts of money and the like, and it's affecting new cars too. But for a new car to really appeal to somebody in the same way that, say, an F40 or an F50 would, because those are an almost guaranteed investment, it has to be something special. And the Evija, I think, had a fairly serious issue from day one. The badge. Simply put, I don't think a Lotus badge holds anywhere near enough appeal to the vast majority of people, certainly those with this kind of money, that we're talking about to justify that kind of spend. Let's face it, for the last 20 years, Lotus has essentially survived on the Elise, which in many people's heads is still a £20,000 car, even though it never really was. Sure, they had other stuff like the Evora come along, but even at 55 grand, people said the Evora was too much money, and at £100,000, essentially nobody bought them. Sure, people are spending 70 grand on the Emira now, but how many are actually doing that, I do not know. I suspect sales will tail off pretty quickly fairly soon. However, 70 grand and 2 million are a very, very long way apart. Even your old school Esprit customer, the people that are currently buying Ferraris, Lamborghinis, McLarens, 2 million quid is just a pipe dream. That's just never, ever going to happen. And that really is a big, big problem. Secondly, the Evija is a car that's trying to make its name based on many, many very bold claims, which can essentially be boiled down to one thing. This is the fastest car out there. Well, I went very Doug DeMuro there, didn't I? This is the Lotus Evija, and it's the fastest car in the world. Or at least it better be, because I think there is a market out there for people who would buy it if it were proven this is quicker than anything else around the ring, around Spa, or quickest in a straight line, something. It needs some sort of seriously impressive record. Let's face it, would the McLaren F1 be quite as well regarded today had it not set that incredible 240 mile an hour record 25 years ago? I'm sure people would still lust after them for sure, but for people like myself that were young when that car was new, that meant a hell of a lot. Being the fastest car in the world carries some serious cachet. Now, of course, the Evija is never going to be fastest in a straight line. That's just not what EVs do. But around a track, they say it's going to be quicker than anything else. And this single-minded focus on the Evija being the fastest thing out there, essentially Sonic the Hedgehog but with wheels, does have some real serious issues attached to it. First of which being, with these continued delays in the Evija's release, every single week is another opportunity for a car to come along which is already faster than the Evija. And it'd be pretty darn embarrassing if you'd signed up to buy the fastest track car out there bar none, only to find that actually it was already not the fastest by the time it had arrived in your garage. And let me ask you this, what do you think's actually going to be quicker around the Nürburgring? The Lotus Evija or the Aston Martin Valkyrie? And do you actually care? Gordon Murray seems to have had no trouble whatsoever finding a home for his T50s, despite the fact that by his own admission, he hasn't built it to be the fastest thing out there. He's built it to be an engaging driver's car. and we'll get back to this in a little bit. In my head, there's also a bit of a simultaneous story which runs with the Evija as well, which is that Lotus have a history of over-promising and under-delivering, which is really quite problematic. In more recent times, one thing they've done, which is a terrible mistake, I think, is they've raised the price of the Emira. Now, this may have been inevitable, but their MD or CEO or whatever he is, Matt Windle, had gone on public record a few months earlier and said, if you have your order down, we're not going to put the price up. Then they put the price up almost regardless of whether you had your order in or not. And this to me is the sort of shenanigans that Lotus of old did, but new Lotus should not be doing, full stop. And the Evija, I do worry, is going to be their biggest moonshoot yet. If they're saying all these great things about it and they're simply not even going to be able to deliver the car. I mean, physically, they haven't handed over a single car yet. There's a whole new factory building dedicated to constructing these things, and it just hasn't arrived. I was also concerned as well when the Evija landed and they said this is the new future for Lotus, and it's a £2 million hypercar, that maybe Geely hadn't really done their market research and looked at what it was that they were buying. Because let's be honest here, Lotus to most people is an Elise. The majority of Lotus owners out there, I would say as an average, have probably spent between £15,000 and £30,000 on buying their car. And even at the top end, you're talking about what, 100 grand? So this 2 million quid is a different league of customer. It's a completely different marketplace entirely. And I couldn't help but wonder, as I know many Lotus fans did, that Geely were almost ignorant of the people that had kind of got Lotus to where it was. Now, the Emira is certainly a step in the right direction and more the sort of thing that we're used to, but that is because it is actually an old Lotus product. Whatever the next mainstream thing is going to be, I think really is going to dictate whether Lotus truly, for the petrol head, is dead or not. But that's an aside. Another simple mistake made with the Evija was the sales target. 130 cars. Let's be honest here, I don't think, even if it was a super popular car, that there was probably a market in the world for 130 of these to be sold. They've shifted, apparently, 8 Fittipaldis, or more likely, they've convinced 8 people to sign up for a Fittipaldi. And if you told me those 8 people represent the entirety of global demand for the Evija, I would believe you. In any case, if I had Evija money, I almost certainly wouldn't want a Fittipaldi, because it's going to be the most common of them all. Like the Zonda Special Edition, I think it's literally the most common of all Zondas. So 130 cars, I think, was always too many. I think they should have either made 30 cars, or they should have made the thing 300 grand and made a lot more of them. And I know it might sound silly, oh, you can't make a £2 million car for 300 grand, but actually, I think with a bit of economies of scale, a bit more development, maybe reining in some of the specs a little bit, I'm not sure it couldn't have been done. And it would have been a seriously impressive thing too. And let's face it, maybe they could make it to not make money, but just as a statement of intent. That would have been really, really cool. However, let's get on to point number 3. And this really, for me, is, I think, the biggest and most simple mistake that Lotus have made. It should not have been an EV. It shouldn't have been an electric car. I know they wanted to show off the future. They wanted to show the world what they could do, and this they thought was probably the easiest way to make a super, super quick car. But here's the simple fact of the matter. This is a car that's being bought by people with serious money who don't like losing it, and they're going to be thinking about this car's investment potential. Now, the simple fact is, EVs are still, in the automotive sphere, a relatively new technology. Okay, I know you can argue they've been around for as long as every other type of car, but practically speaking, as a mainstream modern thing, they're a relatively recent idea. However, this means they're still experiencing a lot of development, and though they're sexy, exciting, and in this moment, the Evija is an incredible achievement if they can make it happen, let's be honest, in 10 minutes, it will be old hat. It will be yesterday's fish and chip paper. There is something better coming. There is something with better motors, a better battery, better whatever coming. It will be here, and it will likely be here very, very soon. You've already got the Tesla Plaid Model S, whatever it is, with 1,000 horsepower in a normal saloon car doing laps around the ring. So the future of EVs is unwritten. We don't know what's coming. And this is a problem. Because for investment potential, this means essentially the car's probably going to be relatively worthless. There's nothing particular about it that's going to be memorable other than the fact that it was kind of their first go. That's it. However, the smart companies are the ones building cars with internal combustion engines. Gordon Murray, Aston Martin and the like, because they've seen the future and they've gone, yeah, EVs are coming. The internal combustion engine is, unfortunately, probably dying. It's being legislated out of existence. So let's use this moment to build the craziest, the wildest, the most insane combustion engine you could possibly imagine. Stuff that really should be in a race car, but now we've put number plates on and we're going to sell it to people. That Gordon Murray T50, I don't even like the look of the car. It looks stupid. But I'd love a go, because it's an incredible V12, naturally aspirated, screaming revving thing with a manual gearbox. And that's what customers like. Look at the price of anything with an auto or manual option, anything sporty. All old Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Porsches, everything. The manuals are what people like. It's the driving engagement, it's the old school feel, it's that connection to the past. That's what people really, really like. So I think the cars that are being produced today, which are going to be collectible, are those that have a proper old school engine in them. And I've actually heard it rumoured a few times from a number of different people that the whole EV bit is one of the reasons that the Evija is still not out there, because apparently they have come quite close to releasing it, only to realise that the technology has moved on another step and they don't want to release a product that's already out of date, so they've had to go back to the drawing board, start again and come up with some new stuff, and then you wind up about to release it again and go, oh crikey, now there's version 3.1 out, so we have to go back and do it again, and so on and so forth. More than that, I think a lot of people would be looking at this car and going, okay, let's be honest here. If you're buying a £2 million car, you don't care about running costs. That does not even enter into it. You know, you could be buying a car that does, gallons per mile rather than miles per gallon. You're just not really going to care. But let's just pretend for a moment you are that kind of well-heeled person that does proper high-end track days. And they do exist out there. These people are out there taking Valkyries out on track and doing that. Majority of these cars will be in glass cages, but some of them do get used as intended. However, these people are quite hardcore. These people are sort of either race drivers or could have been race drivers, and they drive these cars pretty seriously. And the Evija is a car that, even by Lotus's own admissions, will do about 7 minutes, essentially one lap of the ring, before its performance becomes restricted and its batteries probably had a bit of a hammering too, which is what's going to happen with 2,000 horsepower on tap being deployed at the same time. And you really going to want to buy a £2 million car, then go to a high-end track day you've probably paid thousands of pounds for and do one lap, wait half an hour, if you can find a super fast charging point that is, and there aren't many of those at tracks at the moment, then go out and do one more lap? That's just not going to be fun. And real, proper, dedicated, hardcore track guys, they're going to want something even lighter than an Evija, because it's still, okay, by electric car standards, it's not that heavy, but by any other car standards, it is, so it's going to chew through its brakes, tyres, and everything else pretty quickly. And I think the sort of person that would do proper track days just isn't going to be interested. So, as you can see, I think a few mistakes have been made with the Evija, and apparently it is going to start getting delivered this year, and that's going to be a real big moment for Lotus, because you see, over the last sort of 6-7 years I've been following the company quite closely, and they've made many claims for their cars, but they have a bit of a history of being, well, shall we call it Italian with some of their numbers, but they've now been thrust into the limelight, so you can no longer sell a car based on a lap time at Hethel that you and your test drivers have conducted almost in secret. No, you're now in the public eye. If you're saying you've built the fastest car in the world, there are people out there who are going to check and test and see if you really have. And I kind of hope for Lotus's sake that they have, because I want to see Evijas out there. I want to see them being driven and enjoyed. I'd love a go in one, because I'm sure fundamentally it's still amazing, but I just don't think anyone really sat down and went, what are we going to do with this car? Who's going to buy it? Because the answer, I think, with the way the car is right now, is very, very few people indeed. And that's a shame, because I think there was real potential here for them to do something properly special and for the drivers, as they like to keep saying, rather than for the random bloke with far too much money who wants to just waste it on something they're like going to look at and, I don't know, maybe take to the drag strip. That's probably where an Evija would be really, really good. Quarter mile at a time. Great, but otherwise, I think I made a bit of a balls up on this one. Anyway, am I wrong? Have you seen an Evija out and about? Have you ordered one? Even, please, I'd love to hear from you all. Am I right? Am I wrong? Let me know in the comment section down below, and I hope to see you all for the next one. Bye-bye.